Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming and joining us.
Oh, maybe I'm not connected.
We're going to try that one more time. Can everyone give me a thumbs up if they can hear me? Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for coming. If you can't, make sure you're on channel 1, and we'll get started. Well, thank you for joining us for a really exciting conversation for the next few minutes. The panel conversation is entitled, No Weak Links, You're Only as Sustainable as Your Supply Chain. I think there's also a question to be posed. No weak links? Let's explore where we have strength points in supply chain, where we still have obstacles that we have to overcome. And I think what's so excellent about the panel that we have here today is we're going to explore multiple dimensions of supply chain. So sustainability and a kind of green view at supply chain is actually only one of many dimensions that we need to explore to really achieve sustainable supply chains in the largest sense of the word. I'm honored, as I have been throughout this entire convening, to be alongside some very brilliant women who, in their own voice, will just take 1 minute to introduce themselves and the incredible institutions they represent.
Hi, Jessie. You didn't introduce yourself, by the way.
That's good. Some of you heard me yesterday. I don't want to over-introduce myself. My name is Jessie Tolkien. I am the head of labs at a company based in New York City called Purpose. Purpose is in the business of building and supporting movements around the globe, and such an honor to be with all of you. Thanks for that reminder.
Thank you. My name is Alexandra Sumstay. I'm VP Europe at Aqua Energy, with power energy only based on renewable energy. I'm very pleased to be here because indeed we should tackle this question, weak links. Is there any weak links? What are they? I think it is a right question. It's certainly not an easy question for companies. And in such a world as we have, a giant spider net, I think it is fundamental that we ask ourselves this question of weak links. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Evelina Semchuk. I'm Senior Director of Sustainability Office at PepsiCo. Many of you may think or associated PepsiCo with just one brand, Pepsi, but we do have many other different brands. 22 of them are over $1 billion brands in 200 countries with 260,000 employees. So we're kind of a big food and beverage company. So I'm on point for managing an agenda that we have that is called Performance with Purpose. Performance with Purpose 2025 is a holistic agenda that covers product, planet, and people. And I'm on point for the business integration of that, the strategy, the insights, and everything else that comes with the implementation of that. So I'm very eager to talk to you more about our opportunities and challenges.
I promise lots of opportunity for cheering later in our panel to compete with the people behind us.
If you just want to cheer for my name, that's fine as well. So I'm Amanda Smith. I'm here representing Diageo today. Diageo is the leading premium spirits company in the world. So you will be most familiar with brands like Smirnoff, Johnnie Walker, Gordon's Gin. And today I'm really excited to bring a community aspect to the supply chain conversation and to talk to you about how we are trying to ensure we have no weak links by empowering women from the very beginning of our supply chain in agriculture, all the way through to using our brands to work with consumers at the end of our value chain.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Gail. I have a long history in supply chain stuff. I was Chief Supply Chain Officer of Unilever and then of a financial services business. And I'm with something called the Business and Sustainable Development Commission, trying to figure out how we drive systemic change around some of these issues. I would like to change my view of no weak links to creating strong links, particularly women as the strong links in driving supply chain sustainable transformation.
Fantastic. I think that deserves a little applause, right? Just don't want to, I would hate to think that anyone thought we weren't having fun here talking about supply chains today. Okay, so the first question is going to be open to the entire panel. feel free to respond to what one another has to say. And don't worry, audience, we will also make sure to save time for you. So I'm interested to know, how have companies gained influence over supply chain in recent years? And what is, how do you exercise that influence? And what are some of the success stories you all can share with us about gaining influence over supply chain?
So I'm happy to start. Like I said, PepsiCo is a sizable company of $63 billion in revenue. So three things that I wanted to highlight here. Because of our size and the complexity of the supply chain and just the volume of the suppliers that we're working with. The demands from the consumers against PepsiCo are quite high. So we're being held to a whole different level of standards than smaller companies in food and beverages space. Because of that, we obviously have to demand the same kind of a level of standards from our suppliers. We have three things that are happening that I just wanted to highlight. Obviously, among many other ones. The supply code of conduct that we have is a very high level of standards, and it's all aligned with the international human rights, so we expect the highest of our suppliers. The second one is the sustainable sourcing program, which really means us assessing and auditing all the different programs that we're implementing. So far we've covered, I believe, 68 countries. Last year alone, conducted 800 audits. It's pretty significant size, just in 1 year alone. And then the third thing that I wanted to mention is really going all the way back to the supply chain, where everything really starts, is our sustainable farming initiative. It's really driving the social, economic, and environmental set of principles that we have, trying to help everybody, starting from the very beginning in our supply chain on the farms.
So Accor Energy is a power producer, so we supply with energy. So we enable company to actually change their supply chain by using green electricity. And what is interesting is that we have seen a drastic change into our clients. We moved on from states to actually big consumers, big companies. So now we're working with supermarkets such as Walmart, we're working with 3M. You have lots of initiative. IKEA is turning completely green. You have even networks of companies called RE100 turning green. And this is something you can't see, but that's a major shift in your carbon footprint. So it is really important. And we as company in our supply chain, we try to also engage with citizens. Because if you miss these weak links, engaging with citizens, you make sure that you have the right local anchorage. You make sure that you have the citizen financing, and adhesion to your project is really critical for making the whole change into your employees, but also towards the people you address, because you're really into this topic and not just branding.
So from Diageo's perspective, of course, we have our code of business conduct, we have our partnering with suppliers code, our human rights policy, everything that you would expect from a big global multinational in terms of due diligence and trying to exert influence not just in our direct operations, but also down our supply chain. But what I'm really excited about what we're doing at the minute, as we all know, a code or a policy really only goes so far. It states a standard, but it doesn't necessarily say if you are meeting that standard. So what we have begun to do at Diageo is to conduct human rights impact assessments across our markets, and also to do research at key parts in our value chain to look at, for example, the UN high-level panel calls out some really big areas that are barriers to women in agriculture. But what we're trying to do is understand what exactly does that mean in our supply chain. So we're partnering with Care International, who's our global NGO partner, to do research in our supply chain with the Ethiopian barley farmers that supply our brands there, to say what do barriers to women look like in agriculture there on the ground that directly feeds into our business, and then to use that insight to drive the right programs to make a change moving forward. So hopefully, by arming ourselves with much more detailed information about what it really looks like on the ground, we can exert much more influence over how to have a positive impact and change some of those barriers.
So I think it's wonderful what we're all doing, which is really great. I want to just share a story of something that really frustrated me some time ago. So I won't use the brand, but there was a brand that I was working on that had largely, in fact, it was used by virtually every family in Nigeria 6 times a day. Most of its content in this particular product was imported from the US. In Nigeria, this particular content could very easily be sourced from cassava, which is a crop that is grown by very, very many young people as well as women entrepreneurs. I was desperately trying to get a program where we could get, and in fact PepsiCo was involved, Unilever was involved, Cargill was involved, get a program where we could source the cassava, put it into the product that needed to go through a hole in the wall to supply. It never got off the ground. Why didn't it get off the ground? Because all of us, global supply chains, find it really difficult to make a shift. So I guess what I'm asking is, let's talk a little bit less about our supplier codes, etc., and let's talk a little bit more about what specifically we are doing in very particular places, whether it's around creating sustainable economic zones, whether it's around completely transforming communities where, quite frankly, the multinational supply chains and the supporters of that can make a big difference.
Well, let's actually build off of that, and I'd like to explore, much like all things in life, this can't be done alone. No single company, no single supplier can kind of build the foundation for the type of transformation we're looking for. So I'd love to hear and explore some of the partnerships and the role those partnerships are playing that are leading to a more sustainable supply chain. And let's also talk about the challenge in forming those partnerships and making sure that the partnerships themselves are able to sustain.
Yeah, thanks for this question about partnership. The session of this whole forum is about leading in a disrupted world, right? And this is why I would like to anchor my point. Should you go for partnership, you need to think out of the box. You need to align with partners who doesn't do the same business as you do. If you work on energy, you need to ally with farmers. You need with people working on energy. You need to ally with citizens. If you make money, you need to ally with NGOs. With women, you need to ally with men, etc., etc. And partnership is about getting from someone else's brand, others' ideas, making sure we can make business, because this is all about it. This is also making about business, but making it in a different way, because this is achievable, and this is what we experience in building partnerships every day with farmers, every day with people actually being in jails and coming to work in our farms to produce green electricity. That's very different. And of course, it's not the easy way. It's not necessarily the cheapest at the very beginning, but at the end of the day, this will be the most profitable for society. And I think as responsible actor, we actually can only but go for this way.
Yeah, and so before I address that question about partnerships, so thank you for bringing this up, I just wanted to thank Gail for highlighting the complexity of the supply chain, because it's not just, we all obviously recognize and acknowledge the issues that we have in the world. It's more about, addressing it and being able to implement some of the solutions, just because, again, we are part of the business and corporate, and we are responsible to our shareholders at the end of the day as well, while being global citizens and having obviously responsibilities in that space as well. Being again a big company and operating in those 200 countries, I mean, it's really all about partnerships. We can't do it alone. 3 things that I wanted to highlight here is, one of them is around our farmers, so also going towards that. working with academia, in a place like the UK, you might be surprised, but United Kingdom has some water stress areas there. So what we did is we teamed up with Cambridge University and helped our potato farmers to reduce their water use by 50%. By doing, by helping them with irrigation technologies and iCrop technologies, and just helping them use the water a little bit more efficiently. The second thing that I wanted to highlight is around our program that not many people know about. It's called Food for Good. Because we are, sizable again, and our fleet is one of the biggest fleets in around the globe. We're pretty much up there with FedEx, I would say, and UPS. We wanted to make sure that we can deploy our distribution system towards helping others in places like even Texas, where there's when there are poor communities and kids that don't get any food during breaks, school breaks, and during the summertime especially. We do distribute to them healthy provisions of food. And that's not about just business and making us profitable, because we are not making much money on that. But again, the topic here is leading in a disruptive world and leading it on the edge pretty much. So why are we doing it again? It's because it's the right thing to do. So we are trying to help those kids getting the food that they wouldn't get otherwise. We are right now in 18 cities in the US, and we're trying to expand internationally. Again, it's not easy because of the supply chain constraints as well. We're not looking into making money in this case. We're just trying to make the most of our fleet and the most of our innovation that we have in the space, and working with the NGOs and academia to make it all happen as well. So those are the two platforms that we're really expanding and partnering with others in a bigger scale, or trying to.
So I completely agree. Partnerships are absolutely critical for a number of reasons. The first one is shared knowledge. Not a single person knows everything about how to tackle global issues, nor should they. We all have separate and distinct roles to play and areas of expertise. So partnerships are a key part of what we do. The second thing is scale. There's no way you can get to scale as one company that focuses on a specific product or industry. The only way to scale is to partner. And not just to partner with those like you. Actually, the true way to scale is to partner with people different from you, which is really hard, talking about the challenges. You're regularly talking different languages, coming from different cultures. And by that, I don't just mean different countries. Sometimes it's different sectors, NGOs, private sector, government. We all speak different languages. And sometimes, quite frankly, it's different languages between functions within your own organization. They are some of the biggest barriers to overcome. And partnership is a critical part of that. And because a lot of the issues that we face, particularly in sustainable development, are integrated. We've talked a lot about intersectionality around women in the past couple of days. How can you possibly hope to address the challenges facing women if you don't partner with others? We have been doing this successfully in a couple of really exciting ways recently. Number one is through Care International, as I mentioned earlier, our global charity partner. And with them, we're taking a really three-pronged approach. So research to give us the best insight, which then drives, hopefully, the most impactful programs with Care International, and then allows us to advocate for gender equality together on platforms such as this. So really thinking all the way from insight through to advocacy. We're also talking about taking on cross-commodity partnerships with Oxfam at the moment. So working with companies that represent shea and cocoa, and in our case, sorghum, in Ghana, choosing one geography, so it's the same geography, but different commodities. And how can we work together by mapping that in total interlocking value chain in Ghana to tackle some of the barriers to women in agriculture? So I'm not sitting here saying we have the answers and there's lots of challenges, but there's some really exciting ways that we're trying.
Before we go to Gail, I have a slightly different question, which I think you're well suited to lead off. So we are here at the Women's Forum, and I feel like we've tackled a lot of topics over the last 2 days, and we haven't always paused to say, what is the unique angle of this conversation because we are women? So I'm interested in looking at the role of women-led companies that are part of the supply chain, how that's playing into the work you're all thinking about. And also to remind all of us, 85% of consumer choices, I got cut off for a second, consumer choices being made in households across the world are being made by women. So how are the choices we're making, the plans we're putting in place, being guided by the increasing demands and expectations of those women decision makers in households?
Okay, so I want to just also pause for a minute and give you hashtag Women Rising 2030. Okay, hashtag Women Rising 2030. I'm raising that because I think that, if I look at this wonderful panel of women leaders that are trying to do something amazing, and then I look at the issues that we still have in our world. So we are largely degrading land beyond what any of us can think we will ever, through our partnership with Care Oxfam, be able to solve, right? We are not achieving the 2-degree. We are not making sure that women are excluded from human trafficking, etc. We are not solving it. I'm sorry to be, I guess the witch on the panel, but really we need to face reality. We are not yet solving it. We are making some small strides. I believe very strongly, the Business Commission believes very strongly, that if we connect up women leaders, so women who are trying to feed their children, women who are trying to fundamentally shift their supply chains, to become a community that says, let us drive the change we want in the world, I believe we can do something quite different to what, potentially even these wonderful gatherings in the Louvre where we all walk around with tags around our necks might be able to achieve. And so I guess my request here is, yes, of course women want to buy the right things for their children. Yes, of course they want to contribute to their families. Yes, of course they do. We on the, I guess, side of power are trying to really shift things. I worry that we are doing it in, so I talk about Horizon 1, Horizon 2, Horizon 3 thinking. So Horizon 1 is we've got our supply chains, we're trying to do what we can, we're trying to do the best we can, we're partnering, but we're still in the system that we're all kind of stuck in, which is, we're a global supply chain. But there could be a completely different way. And, I would love to ask particularly women who understand that you're leaders, but you're also feeders. How do we get together and drive hashtag Women Rising 2030?
I'd like to react to your question. I'm sorry, I'll be a bit blunt, but I hate it. I mean, honestly, okay, 85% of consumers are women, but can we stop on this? They have enough on their shoulders. It's not for the consumer to twist the supply chain of the companies. It is for the leaders of our company, be they women or men. I don't care how they look like. And women do have enough on their shoulder. A supply chain is an immense network. It's changing every now and then. Contract stops, other starts again. How do you want to control that? Don't wait for consumers to twist your supply chain, otherwise you will lose your consumers. We as company members, be we leaders or not, by the way, this has to come from the inside, not from the consumer. And I'm sorry to be blunt, but I think this is a critical point.
If you don't mind, I just quickly wanted to address it just because the CEO of my company is a woman, Indra Nui. So I just wanted to reinforce a commitment to what we have going on and wanted to highlight that the twist that we made last year when we renewed our Performance with Purpose agenda. So back in 2006, Indra had that vision, to go after, that vision, right? what ended up happening back then, the world wasn't quite ready just yet. So, including our company, by the way. So what ended up happening was there was an immense focus on our direct operations, within what we could do back then, as well as on our foundation. So corporate citizenship, foundation dollars being deployed and just trying to make the most out of it. That was back then. Okay, last year, I don't want to say that I came on board last year. And we launched our Performance with Purpose Agenda 2025. It's what I was put on point to launch back then. I came from a finance world, so my background and my career was in finance. I was back then more of a black and white person. I'm very performance driven and wanted to make sure that whatever I put my name under, that we're gonna deliver on. So what we decided to do back then was shifting from what it used to be just a nice vision, a nice talk about changing things, into the business proposition. So right now, yes, we still have foundation, we still have corporate citizenship, but it's more one of my tactics to get there. We're trying to make a business out of it and trying to drive, the impact. And on a quarterly basis, all of our businesses, all of our sectors have to report on that in a consistent way, in a rigorous way as well, and demonstrate that impact that we're holding them accountable for. So it's not just the suppliers, it's not just the supply chain that we've been talking about, but also our business. It starts with the business. We don't have a business, we don't have an agenda, nothing is going to happen.
I'm just going to do one thing right now. Hashtag Women Rising 2030. Please recognize this young lady.
We're about to go to the audience. One of the things I love about this forum is I don't think we're all expected to agree all of the time. So I'm going to take my point of privilege as moderator and say, I can't be in the business of public mobilization, which means activating people around the world as citizens and consumers, and not offer that I do think it is on the role of consumers to apply pressure, to have high expectations, and to be a powerful accountability mechanism to corporations and suppliers around the world. I agree entirely. If we left it up to consumers, that's a problem. But I think that this is a partnership in and of itself. And I want to live in a world where corporations have to be responsive and have to be accountable to a consumer base around the world. That's my duty as someone in the business of public mobilization to add to the conversation. A quick comment, and then we'll go to the audience for some questions.
Yeah, just very quickly in support of that. I agree it has to be much more the consumers, but I see the pull from consumers that we're seeing at the moment as a real opportunity for sustainability, and I want to make the absolute most of it because our brands are now genuinely excited about operating in this purpose space, and it's because there's a consumer pull. So it's not the only answer, but if it helps me take my work to scale by partnering with enormous global brands, then I will absolutely use that.
Fantastic. I really ended up at a company with a great name, with purpose. It's very relevant to this conversation.
Can I just quickly mention something very quickly?
In the response to these questions, no,
good.
Hold on one second. We're going to go to the audience. We're going to get some questions and work in that.
Okay. Questions?
So on the pressure point issue, can we add in the investors? Just wanted to know from all of you, in your road shows, do you talk about the issues, not only environmental, I'm glad you mentioned human rights because there are a whole bunch of, labor-related issues. Do you talk about that with investors? Have you gotten those kind of questions? Because we need to get investors, and there are a lot of people who are from banks and investment banks. Are they asking the kinds of questions? And particularly to Pepsi, how useful was the behind the brands work you did with Oxfam? Because they brought up a whole bunch of issues on land grabs and gender issues and water that you weren't perfect on and helped you get better, I hope.
Perfect questions. So let me address the investor question first. Funny enough, I recently spent some time at the Yale University in Connecticut in the US, and that was the whole day conversation with the investors actually. and talking about the ESG principles and all of that. So we spend a whole day in all different sessions talking about just that. Okay, the issue is twofold in this case, or the way it's being positioned right now. You know, the investors not asking the questions to the companies, okay, and because they're not asking the questions, and the company is sometimes not communicating directly with the investors, there's this vicious cycle that you know kind of compounds this issue of investors then think, okay, well, it's not important to them because they don't talk to me about it, and we assume it's not important to them because they don't ask those questions. So the underlying issue here, I believe, is the fact that you know, everybody has a different understanding of what sustainability even means. There's a whole spectrum of sustainability, a whole different set of definitions around that, and investors, quite frankly, don't always get that. So I think it comes down to the education for them to understand that. The other aspect with the investors is also about their focus on profit, obviously, right? As much as we like to talk about the short-term and the long-term investments profiles, it's really about the short-term profit deliverable. If you don't do that, I mean, no matter what kind of a sustainable agenda you have, it's not going to matter. It's all about delivering that profit. That's what the investors care about. I mean, right now. There's some shift, obviously, among them. They would like to better understand the ESG factors, the principles, and kind of get a little bit more of a clarity and transparency in reporting. And, you know, there's some movement around that, but we're not quite there just yet.
So what I want to do is I want to take a couple of more questions all in a row from the audience and then give our panel a chance to respond to those before we get to closing statements. Emphasis on quick.
Okay. This question is for the company representatives on the panel.
It's for the company representatives on the panel.
To what extent are you mandating gender equality commitments across your supply chain, say within a given period? So, for example, just riffing off of something that Lisa Jackson said yesterday about their commitment to renewable energy across their supply chains by 2020, are you doing something similar for gender equality across your supply chains? And if so, I'd just like to hear about it.
Great. Let's take a couple more questions.
Thank you. We do agree on, well, we are very behind the sustainability agenda. Would you agree on having fiscal laws enforcing those companies and corporations that are not really in a pro-sustainable practices, so that it becomes much more expensive, the high impact that they do, so that to really accelerate that? Because if we really end up to the consumer and the companies and the partners, we're so much behind that we will never get there.
Great. Let's take one more question and then have the audience respond. Two more, and then we'll do it very quick.
Okay. Just to add to the question here, about bringing women into the global supply chains. We know that women businesses are small and often not equipped. So I'd like to ask what the corporates, as example, those who are here today, what are you doing to equip, train, and prepare women to enter global supply chains?
Okay, one last question.
Well, first, thank you for on the awesome panel. And I want to add on the question over there, because you said that the sustainable supply chain is the right thing to do right now. So is it gonna be the smart thing to do for business, like in terms of business case, and what's your vision on how to actually turn it into the smart business case, not just the right thing to do, you know? Because not many people agree on, like, we should do that because it's the right thing. They need, like, stronger motivation to do that. So I just want you to elaborate on that. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to start on that end of the panel. Please don't feel like you have to completely answer every question. Just a few remarks, and we'll come back down this way.
Few remarks. So first of all, investors, right? So before I did what I'm doing now, which is encouraging everyone to step up, I was involved in a very big investment company. Quite frankly, it's very simple. We need to make the business case. This silly thing that we're all trying to do our best and work with partners and NGOs to make things a little bit better is not going to drive it. We need to get after those really big investment opportunities that are driving growth. Secondly, involving, should we legislate, right? The Business Commission that I'm involved with have been very clear. We are saying the forward-looking CEOs need to stand up and ask for us to integrate the right kind of measures that are addressing carbon, exclusivity, ecosystem services into pricing. We actually believe that needs to happen. And I know that's probably very different from a lot of because we believe that's the only way that we're going to be able to shift things. Thirdly, to women integrated in the supply chain, I don't know what everyone's doing. I do know that, when I was with Unilever, we did 5 million women. When I was with financial services, we said inclusive bank accounts. I think we need to be really careful that we aren't just putting out PR statements and we are actually shifting what we're doing. And that's why I keep on encouraging us to think about very particular areas where we can work together to change what's happening. And so, #WomenRising 2030.
So I'll take the question about building gender equality throughout your supply chain. So at Diageo, what we try to do, or what I'm trying to build, as I mentioned earlier, is a total end-to-end approach. So for me, that's not just what we do as a company, but it's also what we do with our communities and what we do with our consumers. So as a company, we have a target for 35% of our senior leaders to be women by 2020. We also have recruitment procedures which make sure that there is the right proportion of women in the talent pool, so that you're bringing the right number of women into the business in the first place and managing them throughout a multi-year talent management process. In our communities, we work with women to either get them jobs in hospitality or to give them the skills to start their own businesses. And we've empowered over 300,000 women directly and over 1.7 million people indirectly by doing that. And when it comes to consumers, we've been working with Smirnoff. I think maybe just yours, Evelina. On consumers, we've been working with Smirnoff, our major global vodka brand, to advocate for women's empowerment by trying to increase the number of female DJs getting headline slots at festivals. And it makes you smile, but when you think of it, DJs face exactly the same glass ceiling as women in organizations do. So we really are trying to embed it all the way from company through to community and to consumer.
Great.
So quick, I wanted to address the nuance about, sorry, I can't hear myself, the right and the smart thing to do. So there's a right thing to do is one of the things that we're doing, and the reason why I'm saying it is just to demonstrate to you that we have both. The right thing to do is our partnership with TB Alliance, the tuberculosis disease that you might heard about. 200 children really die every single year right now, just because the pills that they're taking are so bitter that their little bodies are rejecting that. So what we decided to do was applying our flavor technology and our flavor experts in what we have. Because what we do very well is food and beverage, and they all taste very good, and I can guarantee you that you consume that. Because we have all the smart technologies right now, we're trying to help, the TB Alliance by applying the right coding for the kids' bodies to be able to accept it and tolerate it and not to die, the way they're doing right now. So that's the right thing to do. We don't make any profit on it. We all do it for $1. Again, it's the right thing to do. The smart thing to do was the SFI, the Sustainable Farming Initiative that I was highlighting. And the way, and then another question that I wanted, and the reason why it's smart is because it sustains our business. We need them, they need us, we need each other to make it happen and to make it work. Without that, we won't have a business. The one other thing that I wanted to address.
We're already at time, so
okay.
I'm going to ask for one
good.
final comment.
Fine.
I'm so sorry that we're so short on time.
We can address it offline.
So to tackle some of the questions on the investment, I think what is key is also to make sure that you have citizens investing in your project. because it anchors your project and it reassures the big ones. And it makes it more sustainable in the long term. So that's a key issue that we are addressing through Accor COP. Second, the question about the legislative process and the law. Yes, we fully support such kind of legislative action because actually most of the ecosystem services are not properly valued by businesses. Just a small example, there is a big shoe company, basket shoe, I won't give the name. It costs them in 2012, only for the ecosystem services such as water, energy, climate, $145 million. $145 million. I have this figure and the name of the company for everyone who wants that, right? Third, good business. You go to a boardroom of any company and you explain them that you're gonna consume less and waste less energy, less money, they will go for it. It's simply logical. So no matter what it is just logical. So the boardroom is buying this. So of course we just have to go for it. Thank you.
That is a perfect final note. We wanted to ask everyone for their dreams for supply chain in the future. We have run out of time. I would like to ask all of you to give our panel a huge round of applause. And I encourage all of you to follow up with the panelists over the lunch break. Thank you so much.